They include narcissism at a pathological level, a sense of self-worth that you as an individual can decide for the rest of society, that your opinion is above everybody else's in every way. So in the extreme form, we get someone like Stalin, who decided that even in areas such as genetics, he knew better than the scientists. One of the hallmarks of dictators is that they reject science and scientists as being below them. They believe they know better. And that's why the treatment of universities, the treatment of scientists is always atrocious in dictatorships such as the one in Iran. The other characteristics, personality characteristics that are worth noting in dictators, in addition to narcissism and self-centeredness, is categorical thinking. The world as right and wrong, I am right, you are wrong, and anybody who is wrong, I have a right to punish. Categorical thinking. And intolerance for differences. Minorities are not tolerated. So these are some of the personality characteristics I've discussed, as well as Machiavellianism and conspiratorial thinking, seeing conspiracies and threats that they are out to get us, that they are going to attack us. And of course, this conspiratorial thinking is very useful in being able to persecute people because they are depicted as part of the threat. So anyone who opposes the dictator is necessarily an enemy and part of the threat. That's why it's so easy for someone like Khamenei to order the persecution, the killing, the maiming of demonstrators, because he sees them as part of the threat. One of the books I've written is The Psychology of Democracy, and I've discussed what kinds of characteristics we need citizens to have in order to be able to support and participate in a democracy. And the starting characteristic is the ability to say to oneself, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. To begin with doubt and self-criticism. Now, you cannot begin with doubt and self-criticism if you are a dogmatic believer in anything, in religion or whatever it is. If you absolutely believe you are 100% correct, that's not going to be a good start for democracy. You have to start with the ability to question yourself and to change your views as evidence comes in and contradicts your views. So you're absolutely right. The democratic way of life begins with the ability to think in more complex ways and to understand the world is not right or wrong, categorical, that there are ambiguities and you have to tolerate ambiguities. And there are people who think differently from you, but you can learn from some of those different views. So this kind of openness to differentness is very important. And of course, dogmatic religion shuts that down immediately. And in places like Iran, we have dogmatic religion. You either go their way or you go no way. When we look at revolutions against dictatorships, they often lead to more dictatorships. And one of the reasons they lead to more dictatorships is because the kinds of people who come to the forefront during revolutions and come to power after revolutions are the most power hungry and ruthless. For example, the Bolsheviks in 1917 were a minority, but Lenin and Stalin and others were completely ruthless in the way they dealt with the opposition, just as Khomeini and his supporters after the revolution were a minority. The radicals were a minority, but they wiped out the moderates. So within a few years, the moderate Muslims like Bazargan and Bani Sadr had been wiped out. I believe we can be hopeful. And the reason is because women are at the forefront. I believe that in revolutions where women take a more active role, we're going to end up with a less dictatorial regime, a more open regime. The secret to this has to be to give women more power, and they are taking power through their own actions. It's not men giving them opportunities, it's women taking opportunities. And that makes me very hopeful about the future of Iran. When we look at improvements in the world at the moment, and particularly in the progress made by Iranians, it's really through women. They are leading the way, and that's why I'm hopeful about what's happening. To understand the changes necessary to achieve a more democratic society, we have to understand what I call political plasticity. Political plasticity is about how malleable we are in our political behavior, how much we can change and how quickly, and in what areas it is very difficult to change. Political plasticity is a neglected topic, unfortunately. We talk about brain plasticity a lot, but more important is political plasticity. Why is it that so many revolutions fail? Why is it that the transition from dictatorship to democracy is so difficult? And often we go backwards. Think about the countries that have gone backwards in the last few decades, from being more open to less open. Look at the transition from the Soviet Union when it collapsed to contemporary Russia. The hope we had that Russia would become democratic, and the failure of that movement. Why is it a failure? Well, one of the things about political plasticity is that in certain areas, it is very difficult to achieve. For example, leader-follower relationships. Each society, each culture has certain styles of leader-follower relationships. And it is important to try to break from traditional relationships to more open ones. But this can come only through focused effort. We have to be aware of what we are doing. Again, I would point to the promising changes that have come about in the role of women. Look at how women have progressed in higher education. In the university where I teach, until fairly recently, women were excluded. They couldn't even come into classes for most of the subjects. Now we have most of the students being women. In my department, most of the faculty are women. How did we achieve this? We gave women an equal opportunity. And I believe that in the political arena, if we want progress, we have to give women equal opportunity so they can come to leadership positions. When you look around the world and you find progress, often it's because women have been allowed to move into leadership positions. When you find a lack of progress, it's often because males have remained dogmatically dominant and they have refused to allow women into leadership positions. That's one of the failures of Iran in the 21st century. It's not just the difference between males and females. It's the kind of male who comes to power through aggression and force. It's the kind of male that comes to power through appealing to lower class dogmatic males. If you look across cultures, you will find that dictators, whether they're potential dictators or actual dictators, they are supported by males with a certain personality characteristic, which we call authoritarian. These authoritarian males are typically lower educated, but they are extremely dogmatic. They are conspiratorial. They are feeling threatened. That's a key characteristic. They feel threatened. The same kind of personality male is supporting Donald Trump. If you look at the US support for Trumpism, it's among that male group. If you look at support for Khamenei and what he is doing in Iran, it's among the lower educated dogmatic males. So there is a certain tendency for these aggressive dictators to be supported by certain types of males. What I'm saying is that if we open up the system to leadership by women, we're going to find a different style of leadership. And often what happens is there is an openness in society that is new. And we're getting this in leadership in places like New Zealand now. Is because first, they do not allow for criticism. And second, because they do not allow for criticism, they become increasingly corrupt. Dictatorships become increasingly corrupt, as is Russia, as is Iran. They become increasingly corrupt because the authorities recognize that they can't be criticized, therefore they can steal, they can be corrupted every other way, and they become increasingly corrupt. So the system run by Khomeini was less corrupt than the system run by Khamenei. Khamenei's group are much more corrupt because they've had a longer time where they could not be criticized and their corruption has increased. And ultimately, because of inefficiency and corruption, they fall down. And that's what happens to every dictatorship.